Our universe rests on the uneasy border between two worlds. The world of man, ordinary and stable, and the world of games, imaginative and chaotic. Where these worlds collide, one man is called to stand for reason, maintain the balance, and destroy ignorance. He is the Game OverThinker.
No, you don't. PyroThinker! Who are you? What do you want? Why are you destroying game stores? If you want me, here I am. In retrospect, choosing to fight a guy who shoots fire out of his fingertips hand-to-hand, probably not the best decision I'll make this week. You know, it occurs to me there's a certain irony in the guy who burned down the Sharkade being a color-coded ninja with fire powers. Whoever or whatever the hell he really is, PyroThinker here would have been right at home in one of those old-school arcade cabinets he torched. I mean, remember back when you didn't even bat an eye at a ninja turning up in just about any game? I mean, hell, there were ninjas in Super Mario 2, and people remember that if you had a thief in your party in the original Final Fantasy, he got upgraded to a ninja, right? When it came to video games, ninjas were right up there with random life-restoring fruit and helpless princesses, in terms of stuff you wound up being surprised if it wasn't included. Now, the reason for this was no secret. Gaming culture in the golden age of the console era was hugely dominated by the influence of Japan, and with Western gamers hungry for content, it was a good business move to rapidly export haphazardly translated Japanese titles to foreign markets. Visual elements and cultural artifacts that were part of Japanese games simply because they were also part of Japanese popular culture became, for Westerners, visual shorthand for video games, period. Prior to the arrival of the NES on Western shores, saying that something looked like a video game usually implied that something looked vaguely futuristic with minimal design elements standing out in high-contrast neon against a sea of black space, i.e. Tron. But after the Famicom invasion, if someone said something looked like a video game, chances are they were talking about something that looked Japanese, or rather like the Japanese cartoon and comic book aesthetic that we only associated with video games. And hey, have you noticed that today, if someone says, say, a movie looks like a video game, they're almost exclusively talking about meaningless spectacle or obnoxiously fetishized military hardware porn? Huh, wonder how that happened. Also, I think it's worth explaining to gamers who didn't arrive on the scene until the early to mid-1990s that in the same period that Japanese visual motifs were conquering the imaginations of my particular generation of American kids, Japan itself already held a kind of forbidden fruit fascination for us. See, for us, Japan was this mysterious, almost mystical place where karate and ninjas and all of our coolest stuff seemed to come from. But to a lot of our parents, Japan was an economically frightening force that was buying up all of our companies, taking American jobs, and causing factories to close, and to a lot of our grandparents, Japan was still an enemy they hadn't stopped being mad at. So for more than a few of us, fixating on or even adopting Japanese pop culture was an act of miniature generational rebellion. Yeah, fine, it wasn't exactly burning the bra or flying the Viet Cong flag, but the idea that the Made in Japan label on our toys, or the ginormous kanji lettering behind the English titles on our games, or wanting to trick-or-treat as a ninja instead of a cowboy or Indian, was something that tweaked off our elders in a very specific way, and I think a lot of us kinda relished it. I also don't think it can be argued that the explosion in Western popularity of anime and manga in the 90s would have happened without the Japanification of video games in the 80s. Come on, be honest. How many older anime fans first found yourself drawn to what were then these strange, mysterious cover boxes in the dark recesses of the video store, or advertisements in hardcore nerd fanzines because the art design reminded you of the unique aesthetic you'd previously associated with video games? The reason anime and manga had only attained sporadic popularity in the West, and especially the United States, in the past is that the tropes, formulas, and overall visual language of those mediums were so entrenched and taken for granted in their original culture that being immersed in them without the benefit of background was incomprehensible to unfamiliar Western eyes. But by the mid-90s, American youth who'd grown up with Japanese video games were able to dive into the genre having already picked up most of the lingo from those very video games, which had made the unique visual cues of anime as ubiquitous and second nature to them as mini-bosses and power-ups. And hey, wait a minute. Speaking of power-ups... Okay. You like to play with fire? Let's see how you like this. Have an ice day. I am really not that good at my job. Yeah, stupid tree. Came out of nowhere, I tell you. No, I don't expect being frozen to hold him for very long, but at least I've bought some time. Now, I should be trying to formulate a strategy for this, but now my mind won't stop going back to Japanese game culture, which is ironic since Japanese game culture seems to have no problem forgetting about me. There's no denying it that the older paradigm from the so-called Golden Age, with Japan calling the shots and the rest of big money gaming frantically playing catch-up, has turned almost completely around. Microsoft, of all people, finally put out an American-made game console that survived, once they figured out how to make them not die, and the always more Western-centric world of PC gaming migrated to consoles via the sudden 21st century mega-popularity of realistic sports sims and military shooters. The visual shorthand of video games has gone from Neon Jungle to Akihabara by the way of Dr. Seuss to the interactive camo print screensaver. Ah well, things change. Unfortunately, other things change in response. It's no secret that the Japanese economy is undergoing a major 21st century shift of its own, compressing in scope as a natural form of cultural evolution in reaction to slowed population growth in an increasingly urbanized society. Unfortunately, that economic shift, coupled with the rise to dominance of Western developers and gaming sensibilities, has led to Japanese game culture itself turning inward and away from the international game market in general. In effect, non-Japanese fans of Japanese games are increasingly being cut off from their favorite titles, series, and even whole genres at the source. 2 weeks ago, we talked about how it was taking an act of organized consumer activism called Operation Rainfall to get Nintendo to release a bunch of Wii JRPGs in North America. Sadly, that's not even close to the end of such shenanigans. Remember hearing about Mega Man Universe, a downloadable Mega Man game where you got to make your own levels and characters, maybe also play as Ryu, Arthur, or the weirdo Mega Man from the American box art? Well, it got cancelled. All at once. There was also going to be a Mega Man Legends 3, finally, for the 3DS. That's also been cancelled, this time because the projected sales didn't meet expectations. But it's not just cancellations Capcom is up to these days. Ace Attorney Investigations 2, not coming to the United States. The Phoenix Wright Professor Layton team-up game, that's probably not coming either. Ironically, you don't need to be Professor Layton to figure out what's going on. Japanese developers are reacting to becoming second-class players in the Western market by cutting the Western market out of the picture. Localization and translation costs money. And if those games are just going to get trampled in the non-Japanese market, it makes less and less sense to market them there. And while it sucks to leave the not-at-all small audience of Western gamers that dig the Japanese gaming aesthetic high and dry like this, it's not like they don't have a reason. Plus, you've got to imagine there's a certain amount of hurt pride involved. Having your games go seemingly all at once from being retail-level players to downloadable bonus content, that can't be good for the ego. If I poured as much creative energy into a game as Ganbarian seems to have poured into, say, Pandora's Tower, knowing that it was going to get blown off the shelves by EA's next $60 roster update or Activision's next Call of Duty map pack delivery system, whereas I might have had a Final Fantasy or Metal Gear Solid level mega hit if only I'd released it a generation or two earlier, would seriously burn my ass. Speaking of which, anyone else find it kinda weird I didn't get so much as singed back there? Whatever. In any case, I get why Japanese developers are apparently so willing to disengage from the Western gaming scene right now, but I really think it's a mistake and a bad long-term approach for them. I mean, yeah, right now the tide is against them, unless of course Japanese gamers suddenly develop a hitherto undemonstrated affinity for first-person shooters and/or post-PlayStation American gamers get over their revulsion toward the presence of primary colors, unusual hairstyles, or women in their gaming. But it can't stay against them forever. Sooner or later, the overwhelming sameness currently suffocating Western gaming has to reach critical mass, and there will be a void ripe for the filling. Remember what happened to action movies in the late 90s? People finally got sick of every one of them being about some muscle-bound douchebag taking revenge for whatever, which allowed the Hong Kong guys to sweep into the US market like a welcome breath of fresh air, and we're all better off for it. And also, Japanese game developers, while you're at it, maybe think about getting down off the old high horse, so to speak. Yeah, it's lame that you don't get to be the standee in the store top dog anymore. Get over it. Reasonable expectations and creative positioning have allowed very Japanese games like Automedius, Catherine, and Demon's Souls to make a solid impact here in the United States. Your Western fans have not abandoned you, so you should think long and hard before you decide to abandon them. Ah, hell, alright. Enough with the daydreaming. I should probably report back to Bunnyface. Change of plans, Commissioner. As it turns out, PyroThinker is a ninja.
Ninjas? Damn. Alright, what do you need? SWAT? National Guard? FEMA? Who do I send?
What part of ninja don't you understand? He's just gonna cut through those guys. You have to give me a minute and regroup. Don't worry. Hold on. I just gotta go get my stuff. Don't worry, Commissioner. It should be okay, just so long as there isn't at least one more elementally powered ninja. Commissioner, I'll call you back. Let me guess. Icy Thinker? Frosty Thinker? Overchiller. CryoThinker. Well, alright. Goodbye.